guys, what's up? I'm Nikhil, your TutePad instructor, and in this Cinema 4D tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to create a really cool looking 3D artwork which you can use it in your portfolios to make your work stand out. And if you're applying for job somewhere in the 3D industry, you can use this kind of artwork to showcase your skills. So this is really helpful tutorial and I hope it helps you guys. So without any further ado, let's get straight into the video and get started. Alright, so here we are in Cinema 4D. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add an object, and to add an object I'm going to go right over here and add a cylinder. Alright, now to hover or to manipulate the viewport, what I can do is hold Alt and click my left key on the mouse to zoom in and zoom out depending on where your object is. Or I can hold Alt and click on the middle mouse wheel to just move it around just like that. Basically I'm just panning around the object. And to go in a rotational view or 360-degree angle, what I can do is hold Alt and click the left mouse or the left key to hover just like so. So this is the basic controls that you need to use when you're hovering over your artwork, or just seeing your artwork from all the angles, just to make it just to make sure that it is perfect. Then what I can do is let's click on the cylinder, and you can see all the properties of the cylinder are shown right over here. So I can play around with the radius of the cylinder depending on what kind of look I'm going for. So for now, I'm just going to set this to somewhere around there. Let's say 10 centimeters looks good. And for the height, I'm going to increase this just like so. Somewhere around 410 looks good to me. And for the height segments, I'm going to set this to 64. So we have more segments into our cylinder. And by segments, I mean if I go right over here in the display section and set this to shading, you can see we have more segments into the height. So the the object will look more smooth depending on how many segments that you have. You can see you can set this really high, but it also increases your render time as well. So you need to keep that in mind. So there we have our cylinder. Let's switch back to shading view. Then what I can do is let's select the cylinder, go into more graph and add a cloner. And basically cloner is just gonna clone the object. So I can just drag the cylinder into the cloner just like that. And now if I go into the cloner by just clicking on it, and then we can go into the object settings, and if I increase the number of counts, you can see we don't see anything because we need to set the mode from linear to radial. So now we have something like this. You can see if I increase the count, we get more and more cylinders just like so. I can also play around with the radius, and right at the bat I can create some really cool looking artworks. Now the first thing that we need to do is switch the plane from XY to XZ, so we get something like that. And let's bring down the count to somewhere around 20, looks good to me. And we can change it later on as well, even after the complete artwork is created, because we are gonna be making it really procedurals so that you can tweak it anytime and anytime that you want. So let's set the radius to somewhere around there, and again we can tweak it later on as well, so it doesn't really matter. Let's add this into a group. So let's create a new null object just like that and drag the cloner into the null object, and let's rename this to group or main group. There we go. So into the main group we have the cloner, and into the cloner we have the cylinder. So now what I'm going to do is let's select the main group, go right over here and add a twist to this, and let's bring down the twist into our main group just like that above our cloner. And then what I'm going to do is go into the object, and right over here in the angle we can tweak this up just like that to twist the object. Now you can see it's just going to twist from the center, so we need to set the mode from limited to unlimited. So now we have something like that. Pretty interesting. And then let's add a taper to this. So let's go right over here and let's add a taper, bring this into the main group. And now I can just taper this up. We can increase the strength to create something like so, which looks pretty interesting. So I'm going to keep it somewhere around there, and let's click on the fillet. So our taper is really smooth, as you can see right over here. And I'm going to rotate this up. So I'm going to select the rotation tool and hold shift, and then just rotate this up by 180 degrees just like that. Also, I'm going to play around with the height, so I can just tweak this up just like so depending on how big my artwork is. So this is looking pretty good to me. I can also play around with the strength depending on what kind of look I'm going for. So I'm going to keep it somewhere around there. And I'm going to go into the cloner and let's increase the radius a little bit, just like so. So now we have something like this. Let's close the group, and actually I'm going to select the cloner, make sure the cloner is selected. Let's go into the More Graph and add an effector called random, so which is just going to randomize some stuff and make it look more interesting, as you can see right over here. Let's go into the random option and we can play around with different number of properties that we have. I can, control my strength, how randomized I want my object to be, so somewhere around there I'll keep it. Let's go into the parameters, and right now the random effector is just affecting the position. Now if I want to affect the scale and the rotation, I can just turn them on, just like clicking on the checkbox, and then I can play around with the X dimension just like that, or the Y if I want to, to create a really cool look. Or I can just click on the uniform scale and then I can tweak this up accordingly, just like so. So I think this is looking pretty interesting to me. But now, as you can see, if I go into my shading lines option, you can see we get this kind of choppy edges. So to fix this, what I can do is go into the cylinder and let's increase the height segment, as you can see. So now it's more smooth, and definitely it's going to increase our render time a little bit. So just keep that in mind when you increase the segments. Let's set this to shading, and there we have a really cool looking artwork. Now, as I told you guys, it is procedural. So what I can do is anytime I can just remove the cylinder from here. Let's say I want to add a square, maybe something like a cube. I'll just set this to maybe 50, 100 and something like 50. I'm going to drag this into the cloner, and there we have a different kind of look. Now, of course, we need to tweak the settings depending on our object, but this is a really cool way. You can anytime switch into a different shape and create a really different kind of an artwork. So I can just hit Control Z to undo everything, just to give you guys an idea of how procedural actually works. So let's place it somewhere around there. And if I just render this up pretty quick just to see how it looks. Right now we don't have any lights, any textures, so our artwork is gonna look really simple, as you can see. And by the way, I have added ambient occlusion, and if you don't know how to add this, you can just delete this up, go into the effect and ambient occlusion. So it's gonna add some shadows for our artwork, but right now we don't have any lights, so the shadows are not gonna be that visible. So what I can do is, before adding lights, let's add some texture to this. So to add a texture, we need to first of all create a material, and to create a material, I'm just gonna double click right over here, and it's gonna create a material just like that. Let's double click on the material to open up the properties, and let's go into the color section, and where it says texture, I'm gonna click on this tab and load a texture or load an image, you can see. And you have two textures that I'll be using, and the project file will be provided to you guys, so you will have this texture which I'm using right now. So I'm gonna select this one and let's hit open, and there we have our texture. Now let's go ahead and add some reflection to this. So to add a reflection, I'm just gonna select the reflection option. Let's add a Beckman, and in the attenuation I'm gonna set this from average to adaptive, just to get a more realistic reflection. Let's bring down the reflection strength really low, maybe somewhere around there, and also increase the roughness a little bit, or maybe I'll not use any roughness, I'll keep it really smooth. So there we have some really nice reflection. And then right off the bat, I can just drag the material onto the cylinder, and there we have our material. Now to create some light, what I can do is, you can use the inbuilt light, but what I like to do is to make it kind of a soft box look, I can add a plane. Alright, let's stretch this up a little bit and hit R to bring down the rotation option, and let's hold shift and rotate this up to snap it in 90 degree, and then I can place it somewhere around there and place it one more right over here. Then I can just double click to create a new material, double click on the material to open its properties, and we don't need any color, so I'm going to close the color and the reflectance. We just need the luminance for the light, and let's set the brightness to 150%. Let's close this up and drag it onto our plane that we have. And now if I select render and render region, so that we rendered only the region that we want to see, so I can just create a square or rectangle just like that, or select the area that I want to render, and it's going to render just that particular region. So you don't need to again and again render the complete artwork. So now you can see we have some really nice reflection on the edges, as you can see right over here. If I just zoom in a little bit more, I can increase the reflection a little bit more by just double clicking on this. Go into reflection, and I'm going to increase this to, let's say, 25. And for the specular strength, I'm going to set this to 25 as well. Hit OK. And if I select render region, and let's render this particular region, you can see we get this really nice reflection. But right now, as you can see, it is not really that sharp. So to make it look really nice and sharp, what I can do is go into our render settings and turn on the anti-aliasing to best, and let's set this the max level to 2x2, which looks pretty good to me. So it's gonna give us some really nice and smooth edges, and there we have our artwork ready. Now one more cool thing that you can do is duplicate the cylinder by holding Control and drag this just below to have 2 copies, just like that. Let's delete the material, and I'm gonna duplicate this by holding Control and dragging this material right over here. Let's double click on this. Let's go into color and let's load an image. Here I have a second texture that I'll be using. Hit open, and there we have it. Let's drag it into our second cylinder. So we have a little bit more variation in our artwork, and you can create a number of duplicates to make your artwork look more, more interesting and more complex. And anytime I can go into the cylinder or cloner if I want to. I can increase the number of clones, to create a really intense scene. So I'm going to keep it somewhere around there. I can also play around with the radius to create a really different look. As you can see, this looks kind of like a wired, some really complex wired material. So I'm going to keep it somewhere around there. Make it look like kind of a cyclone, you can say, or tornado. Looks like kind of a tornado. Looking pretty cool. So pretty quickly, I'm just going to render this, and then we will hop into Photoshop and make it look even more cool. So to render this out, what I can do is let's go right over here in the render settings. Click on output, and I'm going to select the width of 1280 into 720. Looks good to me. And we just need 1 frame, so I'm just going to leave it at current frame. Let's go into save, and let's save a path where I want to save this up. So I'm going to select my path where I want to save it. I'm going to save it into the texture folder. Let's call this tornado. Save, and let's select the format to PNG, so we don't need any background. I want my background to be transparent, so I'm going to click on alpha channel, and there we have it. That's all we need to do. Now if I render this right off the bat, then we will also see this plane that we have. So to hide this, what I can do is make sure it's selected, right click, and let's go to Cinema 4D tags, and let's add a compositing tag, and I'm going to check this off scene by camera. So it's not seen by camera, so whenever I render this up, the white plane is not going to get rendered, as you can see. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one as well. So now we just get the artwork that we want to render. So let's click on render to render this up, and depending on how good your computer is, it's going to take the time according to that. Alright, so as you can see, the render is completed. So let's close this up and let's hop into Photoshop. I'm going to create a new artboard, which is 1280 into 720. Let's make this 150 resolution just to be a bit more pixels into our complete artwork. And let's rename this to tornado and create a new artwork just like that. So now let's go ahead and drag in our artwork into Photoshop. So let's select this and just drag it just like that, and there we have it. I'm just going to scale this a little bit low, just like that. And for the background, I'm going to use a black color. So there we have the black color selected, something like that one, and hit Control Delete to just drop it on the background just like that. Maybe I'll make it a pitch black. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is go right over here and add a curves adjustment just to make the colors pop out a little bit more. Looking really nice, as you can see. And I'm going to also add a gradient map. Let's click right over here and select this preset that we have. Let's hit OK, and let's set this one to soft light. Now this is looking pretty cool. Let's play around with the opacity depending on what kind of look that you want to go with, and I think this is looking pretty nice. You can see before and after, pretty subtle change, but looks really nice. And also one more thing that I'm going to do is create a new layer on the top of our tornado layer. Let's select the brush and I'm going to increase the size just like that by holding Alt. And I'm going to select the orange color, and you can of course select any color that you want, and I'm going to just click just like that to create kind of a spot right over here. And let's set this to soft light. There we go. And as you can see, this is looking more interesting. You can also play around with different colors to have some fun and make it look really interesting. As you can see on the top, I have added some purplish blue tint, and it looks pretty interesting this way. And using this technique, you can create some really cool and advanced looking artworks for your 3D portfolio. And all in all, I hope this tutorial was helpful to you guys, and I will see you guys in my next video. Till then, take care and thank you so much for watching, guys.